Good morning. This is Mackenzie Franklin from SideGame LLC here in Colorado Springs, Colorado, and we are here for an episode of Corporate Cardboard. I'm joined by my co-host, Dan. Go ahead, introduce yourself. How are you this morning?
Yeah, I'm Dan, also known as chairman of the board. Yeah, very well this morning. Pleasure to be here as always, Mackenzie.
Sweet. So we're just going to go ahead and jump right into it with our first section, the games we've been playing. So this is where we just briefly talk about some things that we've been enjoying, some gameplay highlights, maybe some overviews, whatever we need to do. So Dan, go ahead and lead us off with the first bit. What have you been playing?
Okay, yeah, so the first game I want to talk about that I've been playing is Furnace. So Furnace was actually probably one of my most anticipated games, probably the last 12 months or so, as this one really did pop up on my radar quite a while ago and just never, well, obviously took a while to get to the UK anyway, and then finally got it played now. And this one is an economic bidding style game, as you're acquiring these cards by using these different tokens, and these tokens have different values on them ranging from 1 to 4. But the way you use these tokens is pretty damn interesting, because you have a bunch of cards out there, and these cards have kind of two different factors on them, two different pieces of information. The first of which is the resources that these cards can give you, and the second of which is the ability it's going to give you if you win that card and add it to your engine. So in turn, you're going to be placing these discs on these different cards, not only trying to win them, but sometimes actually deliberately trying not to win them, so that you get the resources on them. So, if say I had the highest bid on a card with the value 4, I would acquire that card. But anybody who say placed a value 3 on that card would get the top resource 3 times. So it's quite an interesting way of using those tokens that I haven't seen before. Very simple, streamlined system that I think offers a lot of room for just adding more and more into this game, because despite looking like a quite a heavy, more involved game, this one actually is pretty simple and streamlined, very accessible. Kind of a maybe I wouldn't hesitate to call it a gateway plus level game. As you acquire these cards, then you add them to your row of cards or your engine, and then simultaneously you can choose to convert resources into other resources, and then ultimately with the aim of trying to convert those resources into money in order to get points, because money are your points in this game. I was really impressed with this game. I thought it plays very smoothly. Get it done in about 40 minutes, which is a real sweet spot for me for a game like this. And I'm just really excited to see where this game could go, because the system itself is just, as I said, so flexible that you could really add so much more into this game without taking away from that core experience. So I would actually be very intrigued to see if there's more kind of expansion down the road for this one, to see what that system can do. But very happy with it as it is at the moment. But maybe playing it, rinse and repeat it again and again, maybe it could get a bit tiresome with what's available. But just a little bit more material in there, and this could be right up there for me. So yeah, I'm really enjoying this one. That is Furnace.
Sorry about that. Whoa.
No.
Oh my gosh. Holy cows. So I really like the idea of, it's almost like pushing your luck when it comes to this auction, because you really are trying to push to get the maximum of that resource. When you lose the bid, do you keep all your currency as well as getting the bonus?
Yeah, you do.
Oh
So
my
you don't
gosh.
actually,
Okay.
you don't lose. It's not like a, because you're not essentially losing, you're just getting the resource instead.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's a real kind of, it's one of those systems you think, why hasn't this been done before? Because it's so simple in what it does, but it just works really well. I mean, is this one kind of come up on your radar, Mackenzie? Are you wanting to play this one?
This is one that I've seen come up quite a bit, and I've been a little apprehensive of going towards. I've heard people that really like it, people that really don't, but it seems that you really enjoy this one, and that's
Yeah,
awesome. Like, if the mechanisms are strong, I'm super interested in trying this one. So glad to hear
yeah,
positive from your end. Now I'll probably seek out this one to give a try.
yeah. I would. 'Cause I mean, I don't think it's terribly expensive. And there's kind of two ways you can play it. You can play it the more loosey goosey way, where you can kind of acquire these cards and activate them in any order, or you can actually, when you acquire them, you can actually add them to the row and have to stay fixed in that position. So that when
Hmm.
you activate from left to right, you have to trigger in that way. So you have to kind of pre-plan on when you're going to gain these resources, when you're going to convert them. And I really like that way of playing. But happy with it. I think it's a definitely warranted why it's been so successful to this point.
Gotcha. Awesome. So that is our first game, Furnace. Now I'm going to go ahead and go to one that is a recently arrived Kickstarter, but also it's been a retail game for quite a bit. This is going to be Paladins of the West Kingdom, particularly the City of Crowns expansion. So this new expansion adds an entire new 2 actions to the main game board. And when you play this game, it's generally on your own personal player board. So Paladins of the West Kingdom is a worker placement game of trying to manage your own personal workforce while competing for all of these shared goals that are in the center, essentially. So, standard worker placement style, but instead of fighting for spaces, you are fighting for the commodities that exist on the inside. So, for example, you might have a card that's you can attack, and when you attack it, it'll give you some resource, but there's only like 6 cards in the middle that you can actually attack. So, everybody is competing for these things in the center. Now, what this expansion does is it adds a new type of action, and the action goes on the side of your board. And so this is one that everybody's going to have access to. And the first action is the muster action. This muster action is going to allow you to gain additional resources just passively on your turn by actually going to shared worker spots in the center. So that's kind of cool. It adds more competition towards the center. So you go to the place and then you'll be getting some type of resource. But the other thing it allows you to do is it allows you to actually pick up those spots that are in the center of that board in order to get a bonus of some sort. And I think that's a really cool idea. You have this large piece that you'll be moving around, and he is going to go, you're going to pay a number of provisions in order to pick up one of these cards. So not only do you get the card itself, which is worth some points, and then you get to increase one of your attributes, but you're also going to pick up any workers that were placed on that card to activate it. So you have this cool thing of, do I wait in order to, maximize my stuff that I'm getting because maybe somebody will take that action and try to get those resources, or do I do it myself? But if I do, someone else might pick up that card and be able to get all the resources on it. So you've got a cool choice there. The other thing that you can do with this new action is negotiate, and these bring in these negotiation cards, and they are also double-sided. So you have a choice here whether you take them for their symbols on the bottom for a set collection bonus. So for each different symbol you have at the end, they're worth extra points, and you'll also get to bump up attributes, which is even more points. Or do you use your attributes on the top here to get a boosted up action of another action on your board, but also cost free? So for example, if I took this fortify action, I do it at +5 in the center here, and you'd pay no provisions for this, but you're going to need a lot of this white attribute to do so. So you have a choice right off the bat. Do you go for the stronger other action, which gives you some flexibility with approaching all these other aspects of the game, or do you go with this new set collection bonus on the bottom? Obviously, you're going to have some end game goals that are going to relate to these 2 abilities. So you're going to want to pick and choose based on those in addition. But there are also some other minor bonuses from doing the point scoring ones, because if you do get a set of 3 of the same symbol, you're scoring less points, but you'll earn yourself an instant bonus as well as passive income of workers. So there's some really new, cool mechanisms. I think my favorite mechanism are actually these cards here. I love the way it works with having that choice and getting that strength in action without paying the cost. It just feels extremely nice to do so. But overall, I'm very pleased with this expansion, and I don't see myself not playing with it in the future. It also does some really neat things where it takes the decks of cards, and instead of just having 6 cards come out, you actually flip them over. And so it just really is nice. It just kind of works. And I think it's a really good addition to the game. Dan, have you had a chance to play Paladins yet? I know this was one that was on your list.
No, I haven't. Out of the West Kingdom ones, I've only tried Architects still. I did actually have a friend who bought this, and unfortunately, before we got to play it, he moved quite a way away, so we didn't get to play it in time. But this is one I do want to try. So yeah, certainly willing to give it a go, because I think out of all of them, this one appeals to me the most.
That makes sense. The worker system is extremely solid. It's been borrowed in so many games now. I've seen it in Hadrian's Wall. I've seen it in the new Jurassic World. There's just a lot of that personal board, but you're putting lots of different sets of workers to activate things. So it works well. I think it's a solid system. This is one that I really enjoy playing, either at lower player counts, or in the solo mode is also extremely good. And the implementation of the expansion in the solo mode is also very seamless. So it works extremely well. So if this is one that you're looking to get for solo play, I highly recommend this expansion. Super well done. All right, Dan, what is our next game from your end?
Okay, yeah, so I've got another new title with Savannah Park. So Savannah Park is actually the latest co-designed by Wolfgang Kramer and Michael Kiesling. And this one is kind of following suit from their last year's bigger design, Renature, where it's a very family-friendly, introductory level game based on wildlife. This one is a hell of a lot more puzzly than Renature, which was pretty cutthroat, in-your-face area control style game, despite its appearance. But this one is a pure puzzle game where you have this individual player board, and you're placing all these tiles out on them randomly to set up. And these tiles have, I think, 6 different types of animals in different configurations. So some might just have a single elephant on them. Some might have maybe an elephant and a giraffe on it. And some of them also have water holes on them. And the idea is that all you do on your turn is you take one of these tiles and you place it on an available spot on the board and flip it over to show that it's moved, and that it will no longer be moved for the rest of the game. And the goal of the game is to try and get the biggest groups of these animals as possible, and get as many watering holes connected to those animals as possible, because your score is going to be your biggest group of that animal multiplied by the number of watering holes on there. So somewhat of a King Domino style scoring system. And you know what, that's pretty much all there is to the game. But I like the fact that when it's your turn, you obviously get control about which ones you're going to move. But when it's your opponent's turn, they'll pick the animal and you have to move that tile. So you've got to be very careful about leaving gaps and things, and make sure that if they select a certain animal that you're really relying on to be chosen, that you have the space to move them into. Otherwise, then you could be placing them completely other side of the map, away from all your other matching animals. And it just works remarkably well. It's a lot of fun. It's as simple as it gets, but just because the rules are simple, it doesn't mean the decisions aren't there. And this one certainly does have a lot of puzzly decisions, trying to be efficient, leave gaps, but knowing when to cover things up, because some spots have trees and grass on them, which could be end game points if you leave them exposed. And additionally, you have these bushfires on the board as well, which have like kind of a 1 tree on fire, 2 or 3 trees. And if you have an animal matching that number, like, so if you had a single animal next to that single bushfire, then you actually have to remove them at the end of the game. So that's another kind of consideration you have to weigh up when you're playing these tiles down. So that's all there is to it. I think this one is certainly going to be a hit for families. And you know what, I'd even play this purely with gamers. It's a really fun experience. It only takes about half an hour to play, and you'll find yourself finding yourself into these awful positions where things just don't work out the way you wanted them to. But sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, and it's just really fun. I really recommend this one. That is Savannah Park.
How fun. So this system reminds me a little bit of Tiny Towns, where one person will say one thing, everybody gets that. So not only are you looking at your board to see what might be good for you, but also what might inconvenience others. Is that something you find yourself doing this? What player count did you play this at?
I've only played it at 3 players, but I imagine in a more 2-player game that might be coming to play a bit more. They haven't got the space to put that thing into, and then you just say it because you can. So yeah, that is certainly a wrinkle of the game that you can explore. I must admit, to this point, I haven't really tried to play that kind of game. I've just kind of had my head down and just reacting what I've got, but inadvertently or deliberately, it's still going to screw other people over, because I've chosen an animal I need to move, and obviously my opponent's been like, "Oh, why did you choose that one? I needed that space. I wasn't ready for that one." So yeah, even passively, it's going to affect other players.
You planned it all along. That's why. Oh man, excellent, fantastic. So that's Savannah Park. Okay, this next game is one that I have been looking at for a really, really long time. And I was super excited that I finally pulled the trigger on it, and it ended up being a very fun game. Not the most deep game in the world, but very unique, very interesting experience. This is going to be the game Fort. This is a letter game that's based off of an older design, SPQR, which is a game about building a Roman civilization. And I think this new theme of children playing in a fort lends itself extremely well to this game. In this game, you are playing as a group of kids, and you are basically getting them all together to play, build forts, and enjoy and have fun in these made-up rules. And this is translated into gameplay-wise through a deck-building system. However, it's a very unique deck-building style where on your turn, you'll draw your hand of cards, and then you'll play one card Every card you don't play, though, is going to be put in front of you into this yard. And this yard is going to be a spot where at the end of everybody's turn, they are allowed to recruit one card from an opponent's yard or from a central park area. So any card you don't use, it becomes unsafe. Anybody can pick it, anybody can take it. And it's kind of scary because you might have a really good card that just you can't use right now. And so as soon as you decide not to, it becomes available, and it's kind of scary. And I really like that idea. It works extremely well. It's very quick, very fun. But I think that there's some really neat stuff in this new Cats and Dogs expansion. So this new expansion here adds 2 new types of cards. It's going to add, go figure, cats and dogs. And so the first thing is probably my favorite out of the 2 are the cats, actually. And the way the cats work is they provide you with kind of little goals that you're going for. The cats are attracted to something. For example, they're attracted to the amount of a specific symbol inside of your yard. And so that means that now on your turn, you may want to get rid of some cards into your yard on purpose just to attract these cats. But you have that decision of, do I make sure they go in my discard pile so I keep them? Or am I going to be going for these cats to get their bonus abilities? Because some of the abilities are very strong, like taking resources from a supply or getting to choose multiple cards when you're taking cards from the central deck if you're digging for a specific option. There's some really neat options with the cats, and I think they add something extremely good. So there's all sorts of different cats to play with, and some are positive, some are negative, which is also cool. So it does add some new flair to the game based on the ones you pick. The art is also wonderful, and the names of these cats are great. Just look at Dumplin there. That dude's a chunk. I love it. It is so funny. It cracks me up. The other thing that it adds are the dogs, and the dogs are also very unique and interesting. The dogs change the game a bit more dramatically. When you play with the dogs, normally you're going to draft a deck of 10 cards, and when you play with the dogs, your starting draft is going to have 3 dogs in it. And so when you draft these dogs, they are very powerful usually. However, if you don't play a dog, they're going to run away as fast as they can. So if it gets back to you and the dogs are in your park, they're actually going to go into your neighbor's discard pile. So when you have a dog, you want to really prioritize using them because you use them or lose them. And it's kind of scary to see how they jump around the board. And at the end of the game, whoever's played the most dogs, who's actually used them for their effects, is going to get a special bonus. And these dogs are also very unique. You have some dogs that are going to count as your opponent's played them, but they give you a really powerful resource. Or you're going to have these dogs with really interesting requirements that allow you to do something funky that it's just such a cool concept. I really like these 2 systems, and I think they work really well in the fort system as a whole. I'm just very impressed with this little tiny box expansion that's going to cost you like $6, which is amazing that there's so much content in this little thing. Have you had a chance to play Fort or the old SPQR? What do you think of this style of system?
No, I haven't actually played. I don't think I've played any leader game at all, actually. So it's kind of
Really?
a company I've never ever explored. No, I actually missed out on a chance to play Root the other day, and I probably should have done. But yeah, I've not played this one, but I do enjoy games that use discard piles or neglected cards in interesting ways. So I'm quite interested to see that some of these cards have used them now or regret not doing so, or as you said, suffer a consequence of it going to an opponent. So I do like that level of interaction. But yeah, the actual game I've not really explored too much into it, despite being obviously very well received. You mentioned earlier about Paladins of the Worst Kingdom and the expansion being probably an auto include every time. Is this going to be the same thing? Are you going to always play with these?
I think I'm going to always play with the cats expansion because I really like that tension of, do I keep these cards or do I put them out? Because you do have ways that you can kind of play multiple cards by stacking suits to get a stronger ability. So I really like that choice of, do I commit all these suits out in my yard so that I can attract these cats, or am I actually going to play them to keep them for myself? So I really like that tense decision, and each of these characters, these little cats, have a small ability that is going to tweak the game. So I see myself using the cats all the time, but I don't see myself using the dogs all the time because they're pretty, you have to kind of focus on making sure you get those dogs played. And so it kind of changes how you're going to pursue the rest of the strategy. So I see myself using the cats, but not always the dogs. Great question. So that's Fort Cats and Dogs expansion. All right, Dan, your last game for this morning.
Yeah, so my final pick this week is going to be Free Ride, which is the latest Freedom and Freeze game. This is a train game, and a relatively simple one at that. So as you'd expect with train games, you're building routes, connecting cities to other cities, and a bit like Ticket to Ride, I suppose. you are trying to obtain these tickets and start from one city and end in another city. But except this one, you actually have a physical train on the board where you are traveling up these routes and trying to get those tickets fulfilled. This game is so simple in its rule set. You are literally just building track. You are either moving your train or you are just taking more train into your supply. However, when you build a new piece of track, you are going to claim it as your own, so that it's your personal private railway line, which you can use for free. So yeah, no penalty, you can travel around your own pre-built train tracks. However, if somebody else wants to use your train track, then they have to pay you a coin to do so. But as soon as they pay that coin, then the rail line is going to not be yours anymore, and it's going to be public domain, so anybody can use it for free from then on. So, and I will say that money in this game is such a valuable resource, not only because it's not that common in the board at all, but because every coin is worth 3 points at the end of the game. So that's not to be that's not to be sniffed at. That's quite a significant points amount. So it really is about weighing up. Do you think it's going to be worth me building my own track and maybe taking a bit longer to go somewhere, or am I going to actually, let's just pay for it. Let's pay my opponent, and let's consider that I'm probably going to get more points out of making these deliveries. But I also like the fact that when you finish these contracts and you draft new ones from this common supply of routes, you actually have to be in that city in order to collect that route to start the new journey. So that's a really cool, again, like efficiency puzzle. You travel here to here and make sure that you're not too far from your destination to start your new your new trip. So again, it's all that planning and mapping things out. I thought the gameplay was very smooth, a lot of fun. I will say there's a couple of production issues, mainly because, as you can see here from the board, it's not color coded at all. All the ticket, all the actual objective cards are not color coded either. So if you're not very good at geography, which I'm not terribly good at geography, then it can be a bit like cross-referencing, is this there? Where is it? Where is it on the map? Whereas on the personal cards, it would be nice if it had like a small little diagram or a color code to say like it's roughly in this area, rather than, picking up two cards and one's on one side of the board and one's all on the other side of the board. So there is a little bit of downtime in terms of, keep looking back and forth. Where is it again? What's my best route? But other than that, the gameplay is really smooth and a lot of fun. And games like this, I think it's kind of like Ticket to Ride taken to the next level and slightly more Eurofied. But I think because the rules overhead is so low and so accessible, and it actually scales pretty well from, say, 3, 4, or 5 players, then I would actually recommend this one. And I don't have a train game, and this one is going to fill that void for some time to come, I think.
Wow. So, well, you do technically have a train game. Brass Birmingham counts if you consider that a train game.
True.
So, but
Yeah,
that being said, this sounds so good. Like, this actually reminds me a lot of the Crayon Rail games. So we talked about those previously on this corporate cardboard with the Iron Dragon, where you're actually drawing those routes on that map. But this just seems like the way better version of it. First off, it's shorter, and the economy that you're giving to other players is actually like really substantial, instead of like paying $10 or $15 or something. Like, that's a significant, like, oh, that's $1. Like, oh man, I don't know, that's significant. And I really like how once somebody uses it, that's a huge decision, and everyone else is benefiting from that as well. So oh, I really like that idea. That's so good. This when you explain that ticket thing of like having to reference back and forth, when I play Ticket to Ride, that's sometimes how it is, particularly when I'm playing on maps where I don't know the different locations, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, where the heck is this place? I have no idea what's going on. That even happens sometimes with the America map with the United States, which is kind of embarrassing because I'll be looking at the tickets and being like, I know that Missouri is roughly here, but where is this city in Missouri? It's really funny. So I'm glad that I'm not the only one who struggles with that, but this one seems worse because it's just the name of the city.
Yeah.
At least you get to learn some geography at the end of this, as opposed to like some fantasy land where now you know where this fake area is on this fake map. So I like that. So,
yeah, that's true.
This looks great. So this is oh man, I might have to recommend this to some friends of mine that really enjoy that Cube Rails series. I like this idea of, sorry, not Cube Rails, of the Crane Rails. So that's really cool. That's so exciting. Excellent suggestion, and I'm glad you enjoyed it. I'm glad it's found a spot in your collection.
Yeah, it's just a really pleasant game. Nothing revolutionary, but it does what it does pretty well.
Fantastic. Awesome. So that takes us out of our games we've been playing, and that moves us into our crowdfunding picks for this week. Now, this week is a very special week because something that never happened before is happening right now. Dan, what are our crowdfunding picks?
I think both of us have got nothing in that box, so nothing at all from me. And yeah, for the first time, Mackenzie's Mr. Kickstarter, Mr. Crowdfunding, and even he's got nothing this time.
Yeah. It was it's kind of barren right now. I'll be very honest. Like I was looking for things, I was looking at projects, and Dan and I made an agreement that we're only going to put something on our crowdfunding picks if we actually have got it, whether it be for
Yeah.
Dan's personal collection or if we're getting it for the library. Because if they're not worth doing that, then maybe they're not worth talking about. I really did consider Weather Machine for a while. That one that those thematics, I need to make sure that they translate to the gameplay first, though. And seeing as I'm not missing much by waiting for retail, did not make my crowdfunding picks this time. Anything that was close to making your picks, Dan?
I'm with you. I'm on the fence with Weather Machine. I think I need to do a bit more digging into the gameplay and how it plays because it's quite an expensive game, and yeah, I'm not going to make that decision too lightly.
And I also thought it was funky that Weather Machine solo mode is like an add-on. It's not even part of the base game, which I thought was a unfortunate step in that direction. But the production's
Right.
amazing, so uh, maybe it's worth it. Like that artwork is pretty dang good. But that being said, that is our crowdfunding picks section. Let's go ahead and move on to our news items. Now, our news items only has one item here, and this one we're going to be talking about a new studio. This is Postmark Games. So Postmark Games has a very unique approach to just game design as a whole. They're going to be looking at creating basically an entire line of print and play games. The idea is to completely circumvent the process of needing to do that mass production, waiting for shipping. You're basically going to get your game as soon as the project's complete, which I think is really, really neat. I think it's a really cool approach. Now, the big question is this something that people are looking for, or is this something that you are excited to do? They do have a group of designers already that are going to be working on it. So they have Matthew Dunstan, co-designer of Elysium, and Rory Muldoon, creator of Scora. So I have not heard of Scora, but I have heard of Elysium. So you have people who know what they're doing in the game design space, but they are restricting themselves to this print and play model. So my question to you, Dan, is this something that you would look into, and do you even play print and play games at all?
I've never ever played a print and play game. Never really had the desire to. Um, I think this is probably a matter of people trying to be a bit entrepreneurial, capitalizing on the shipping stuff at the moment, and I can't blame them for that. But as you said, it's quite interesting to see. Normally I wouldn't be interested in this, but you said that Matthew Dunstan and I think Brett Gilbert's involved as well. They're really good designers, so obviously this isn't something that's just somebody trying to capitalize on and not get any substance to it. These are really good designers of a good pedigree. So who knows? This could be a whole new space, and this could be like the kind of early adopter for this kind of this model. So they could be leading the charge on this system.
I have dabbled in the print and play styles a bit. I had a friend that was really into them for a really long time, and we kept on trying them. But unfortunately, they weren't just something that I would gravitate to. I really like the tactile feel of these produced games. I like grabbing things, and I feel like if I want to try something new, there's always something that I can get at retail that's available then if I want something now. Now, that being said, if these games really are that amazing, I'll definitely give them a try. Like, if the game stands up to it, I think it's worth the print and play. I print and play a lot of expansions and whatnot if they're available. I know that they did the solo mode for Seven Wonders Duel, which is fantastic, but it's only a print and play. Fine, that's fine. You made something amazing. I'll give it a try. Same thing with a lot of these scenarios. There's a bunch of scenarios for Arkham Horror, the card game, that are print and play. Awesome. I love that I can use my pre-existing stuff to play something new. So I really like that, and I'm curious to see if maybe they get different IPs and are able to publish those as print and play expansions. That sounds so cool, and that's something that I'd be really interested in, are additional things for games that I already own. I think that'd be really awesome. So any ideas on that? Would you be interested in an expansion for something that you already own?
I'd be interested. I'm certainly not against this happening. It's just up to this point I've not had anything come to my attention that needs it. As you said, if there's some good buzz about a print and play game, I've got a thousand other games that I want to play anyway. So I'd rather not go to the inconvenience of producing it all myself. But still, obviously very very opportunistic of this company to try and lead the charge on this.
I wish them luck, and I hope it turns out
Yeah.
good and they become a reputable company. That's something we're going to be looking for that immediate satisfaction of a solid game. So
Yeah.
that's our news section here. Let's go ahead and move on to our next section. This is card and component appreciation, where we talk about something in games that we just love, whether it be the artwork, the tactileness of how it functions in the game. Dan, what is your first pick here?
Okay, actually, not deliberately, but I actually mentioned this game earlier. This is Renature, and I'm particularly talking about the dominoes in Renature. So, as you mentioned, the tactility of a game is often important to a lot of people. This game has that in spades. So, this one takes the traditional domino system, as you were just trying to line up symbol to symbol. In this occasion, it's going to be these really charming animal illustrations, and you're basically adding them around this board with these mud tracks, and that basically means that when you place these dominoes to the either left or right side of those dominoes, you can choose to plant these bushes and to claim them for area majorities. But without going off track with the components themselves, the actual dominoes are just fantastic. They're nice, chunky wooden pieces, feel really good in the hand. Ultra high quality, and I think this game certainly did a good job of making that choice of making the dominoes rather than say a standard cardboard, two-sided tile or something. It really does amp up the feel and the deluxeness of the game, and it just makes it have that old school toy factor, and that meshed with a Kramer and Keesling design just makes for a really nice overall well-rounded package for me. So I'm surprised that dominoes like this aren't used more often. I think maybe they should be, and I think maybe we're missing a trick that dominoes aren't used more. But this is a really good example of again, old traditional components used in a modern board game and done well. So yeah, that is the dominoes for Renature.
Fantastic. All right, so my game is a little bit different. I'm getting away from a component and the tactile feel per se, but I'm going to one that I just really, really enjoy the artwork. This is for the board game Oath, Chronicles of Empire and Exile. Now, this in particular is one of the Denizen cards. So in this game, you're going to be often picking a bunch of these citizens and denizens from different areas, and each of them comes with their own unique ability. You can either play them to the board as part of a central tableau that anyone can use if they rule it or they visit it, or you can use them as your personal advisors. And this card in particular, Insomnia here, is full of flavor, and it's just so cool in what it does. So this one has this little person icon, so you have to play it as an advisor, and it also has a chain. And chain cards are really special because once you play a chain card, they cannot be removed. So you are making a commitment when you play this card. And the last thing that it says is it gives you a special effect during the rest phase that says every end phase you're going to be getting a secret. Now, a secret is actually a pretty hard to get resource as opposed to favor, which is the coins in the game. And they are a renewable resource that you can use. So you're going to be getting one of these secrets every round. You can use it to activate a bunch of actions. You can use it to claim Darkest Secret token. But the other thing that it comes with is a restriction. You are only allowed to have 2 advisors. So normally 3 advisors is all you get. So reducing a third of your potential special abilities is pretty significant, but you get this awesome bonus as a plus side here, which is crazy. So I love this decision, and the earlier you play this, the better. So I like that if you draft this turn 1, this might be a strategy that you go for, is just, man, I'm going to be playing secrets. I'm going to be putting secret cards out on the board because my hand is smaller. And so you have this really neat decision right from turn 1 if you pull this Insomnia card. And furthermore, if you pull it later, you have an even more tense decision. Is it worth playing this now and getting less of a reward, but still having that same restriction? I really like this card, and the artwork, of course, is fantastic. I love just this guy's face. Everybody in this whole Oath game looks like a Muppet that has some form of emotional distraught going in on their heads. So I think it's really funny. So that's Insomnia from Oath. Have you had a chance? Oh, that's right. We said earlier you had not played a letter game yet. Out of all the letter games, which one would you like to play first?
I think I'm intrigued and interested to play Root. I'd probably choose Root first.
Understandable. I think actually that is my favorite letter game. So I think that's totally understandable. It's amazing. I was just talking about how much I love Root yesterday. That is brilliance and asymmetry. I do think Oath has a really cool system and the way it evolves and the way it works. Not my favorite game from them, but still a fantastic game and one that I've really enjoyed from this year and has gotten a lot of table time. And just it's a game that I really like. But that's the card here. That is Insomnia from Oath, Chronicles of Empire and Exile. And that finishes our card and component appreciation. So now we move on to our next section. This is our this or that section. Now, Dan, what was our question from last week?
Okay, so our question from the last episode was referring to the deluxification of games or not. So are you in favor of getting the, all shining version of a board game with all the deluxe components, all the all the superfluous stuff that you don't really need to play the game, but adds to that, plush feel to things and makes it feel a little more lavish, a bit more polished. I think this is kind of a hot topic, really. I mean, some people are really in the favor of pimping out the games as much as possible. I know we discussed last time that Mackenzie's very much in that camp. He loves getting the best version of a game he possibly can. I said, yeah, I do like it, but more often than not, I'll lean towards retail. And particularly because I don't tend to play the same game over and over again. And I was quite surprised by the results of this one. So have you actually seen the outcome of this, Mackenzie?
Yes. So I am also pretty shocked. It's pretty neck and neck when it comes to those results, but you've got it, Dan. Retail seems to be what the people are going for. So we have some very good comments here. We have Bastion Ulp here. He says, very circumstantial. Generally go with the retail version, but some deluxe have upgrades that are just so significant. And I think that that's a very good perspective on this because a lot of the times the deluxe upgrades are pretty superfluous. There's something that you might not need, but other times they really do enhance that game experience. Like I love I don't know if you've played the Rising Sun edition with all the fancy deluxe upgrades. Like those are so cool because they increase the visibility with the little markers. And that is a significant upgrade. But then there are others where maybe you get like a gold first player marker and who cares? Like there's something like that. So I really like that one. Any other comments catch your eye, Dan?
Sorry, I haven't got it in front of me right now. But I was thinking about that. The thing is about this or that is that it has to be one or the other. There's no middle ground.
Yeah.
So that, of course, more often than not, the answer is it depends. It always depends on the actual circumstances. But let's have a look at some of the other comments here. So this chap says metal coins, wooden pieces, sleeves, yes, but only when it enhances the game experience. And he'd rather trade lifelike resources than rather basic colored cubes. I think most people would agree with that. What else have we got here? So most of the times he's looking for price, quality, quantity first. Only for games I really enjoy and play a lot, bling can be applied. And yeah, I'm kind of in that camp as well. If I've got definitely a game that I'm going to be playing for years and years to come, a true and tried and tested favorite, then I certainly would be willing to spend that extra dollar to to get the real nice stuff with it.
And I think that Sean Lupton brings up a good point here. He says he's not interested if it's just a component upgrade, but then he also says that he would be turned off of a game if the deluxe edition had some form of expansion. So I'm curious, Sean, if you're watching this or you're watching it later, when do you get an upgraded game? Because you don't care if it's an upgraded component, but you also don't really like it if it's like an expansion. I think that those expansion deluxe editions are the ones that I'm more so will go into because that gameplay content, I love adding variability to things. I think the Coco Pelli, I really like how that had all those deluxe expansions thrown in. The Capital Deluxe 2 Generations had a whole bunch of new modules if you did the Kickstarter. I think that is awesome. Or even new characters. Like if you get the Zombicide or Death May Die, you'll just have all of these things that you have access to. So super cool. I think that's super awesome. And then exactly right here, Original Nocturus here. He says that as long as the deluxe version doesn't include extra gameplay, it's all good. So it's such a polarizing thing because some people look for that and some people don't. So wild.
Yeah, something I thought was interesting as well. I know we were expecting the deluxe to be higher than the retail one, and it wasn't. But the fact that it's so close, I think, does say a lot about, it probably gives the publishers quite a lot of confidence that, who would have thought that this many people are willing to spend that much money to get these extra things? So, even the fact that it's this close just shows that there's a massive, massive market for people to pimp up their games and, again, add that extra, add more and more money to their games because people are willing to pay it. So, that's just kind of shows that it's not going to change anytime soon. There's always going to be, at least for the foreseeable, there's going to be deluxe versions of games.
And I think Emily C brings up a great point here. Good to have you this morning. She says that the tower in the original El Grande is better because it's solid wood. So sometimes upgrading a game to a deluxe edition means like it might take away from that original charm or that original beauty. So it's really cool how there's this like what makes something deluxe, what actually is an upgrade. So I really like that. Have you experienced a game, Dan, where the upgrade was actually worse than the original?
Oh, I'm sure I have, but I can't think immediately what that would be.
The game that comes to mind immediately for me is Destinies. If you've ever played with the Destinies playmats or metal coins, the metal coins are awful. They're like these super thin coins, and the the cardboard coins are actually thicker and feel more satisfying to play with, as opposed to like these these pieces of tin that have been chopped out. Oh man, and the mats get all messed up. So I'd rather have those recessed boards.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing that comes to my mind.
Yeah, I also something kind of similar to that is when games make deluxeified version and retail version, but the retail ones are absolutely awful. Like they put no care whatsoever into the retail version. So something that comes to mind there is the Villagers, the game Villagers, which was a relatively big hit from a few years ago from Sinister Fish. I think you could either get the wooden coins or the retail ones were the worst coins I've ever seen in my life. Just literally just a ring with a 1 written on it in black. That's all it was. Fantastic. It's a very cheeky move.
Oh my gosh. And then Emily also has a good one here. Does Deluxify also mean the storage solution? I think that would depend on the game. So I would probably say yes. A lot of the times the Deluxified version has like game trays included. That's part of that bonus. And a lot of the times those storage solutions are built with that deluxe edition in mind. A game that comes to mind for me for this is Dwellings of Eldervale, where if you did not get the additional 3D components or the bases that made noise and whatnot, then there would just be all this empty space in your box for all the stuff you didn't get, which I think is hilarious. So you have like a third of your box that's empty because you just didn't buy that expansion. So super goofy.
Yeah, so these trays as well, that's kind of a double-edged sword because sometimes they put those trays in with the extra and the trays are awful. Like you mentioned Coco Pelli, I don't think the Coco Pelli trays needed at all.
I just recently on an organizing video tossed the insert for Paladins of the new Paladins of the West Kingdom because it was just not functionally good. It works, but it slows down the setup. Oh, it's just couldn't believe it that they offered you this new organized expansion. It just was not that good. It actually slowed down the gameplay setup. Oh boy.
There we go.
Oh, awesome. And then Emily says that she got one of our Dino World storage solution that we suggestion. Thank you. I think it works well. I hope that it works well for your group and it helps you get into that game a little bit quicker. So awesome. So that brings us to an end of our this or that. Now, what's our question for next week, Dan?
I think we are going to talk about whether you would, or what your opinions are on app integration on board games or not. Are you all for it? Are you not all for it? I suppose there's no middle ground because this is this or that. But
they'll find a way.
yeah. So, if you had to choose one or the other, are you saying, yeah, I'm willing and open to having apps in my games? Or are you just a cold cut? No, I like my board games being analog. I'm not interested in getting my phone involved or tablet involved. So it'd be interesting to see what the opinion of this is. So first off, Mackenzie, what is your opinion and what do you think the result would be?
So if I had to say yes or no, I'd probably say no. Most of the games that I've played with apps, the app is so integral to the game and it does work, but it takes me out of the experience usually. I'm not a big fan of these, especially ones where they're extremely heavily involved. Not one that I really enjoy. The ones that come to mind are things like Mansions of Madness or Destinies, where the entire game, I'm just looking at phone, and that's where my attention is. I'm no longer really focused on the other players. I'm focused on my own personal game here or management of some sort. It's not something that I have a huge amount of fun with, but I think that there are some games that benefit from extremely. But if I had to choose, I would probably say no.
Yeah, I'm exactly the same. I love it when apps are used to a certain degree to help with admin, to help with giving you instant feedback, which would take a long time normally. That kind of thing, I think is great. But when, as you said, when a game is driven by an app, constantly back and forth, again losing the engagement with the physical pieces, then I'm dead against that really. So yeah, I would actually vote no myself as well. And I think the actual result from the viewers will be no as well.
I agree. And then we have a very good suggestion here from does the app from Emily, does it count voice reading or narration? And unfortunately, I think it would. Oh my goodness, because that's my favorite type of app is the voice reading because you just play it in the background and you don't have to look at it and I love that. But if I had to pick, not all games are going to use this and I mean I'd probably pick a game that doesn't have it. I don't mind reading, but I can definitely see how reading aloud can be a bear. My voice can only take so much. I'm constantly talking. Original Nocturus here, totally agree. Yeah, I think that it's very, very intrusive, and I feel like I'm just constantly staring at it. And I've seen like reviews of the game where they're playing the game without even setting up anything on the board, which is so wild. Like that's what you can do in Destinies too. You can ignore what's going on the board, roll your dice for skill checks, and just play on the app, which is wild to me. So have you had that experience where you've literally just played the game on the app, didn't even set it up?
No, because I think most of the games that use apps so heavily are not my type of games anyway.
Yeah.
So I think maybe that's probably why I've steered away from them. But yes, I've yet to have that real intrusive app that completely takes over the game. I suppose the biggest example would be something like Chronicles of Crime, but that's kind of a hybrid because I don't know. But I'm kind of all for it when it's the novelty of the game. But I wouldn't. I don't know. It's a hard one for me, but 99% of the time I'll choose one without an app.
I think Fatal Papercut summarizes it really well. It's more of a tangible video game experience as opposed to a board game one. And he even includes Chronicles of Crime into that. And I think I totally agree with that. So I think that works here. And then we also have some people that disagree with us that don't understanding that Mansions of Madness is too intrusive. So I think it's just different for each player. So I think it makes sense. Everyone's going to have their opinion. So I'm curious to see what our viewers say on this. So take a look on my channel for the next couple of days to see if the poll, and I would love to see you vote and comment your opinions. So you're also welcome to comment on the video here. But that is our this or that apps and games, yes or no. Super excited to see what y'all put. Now, that being said, we're going to move on to our next section here. This is mechanism appreciation. So our mechanism appreciation is just full of good stuff. So this one is going to talk about the games, the actual gameplay as opposed to the component quality, and just see how things are going to be working. So Dan, I'm going to go ahead and start this one, and this is going to be for Glenmore 2 Chronicles. Glenmore 2 Chronicles is just full of cool stuff. It is a game that comes with 8 expansions right in the box, and every time you pull out one of these expansions, it's going to change the gameplay drastically. And this one that I'm talking about is from the section called the Dubious Tome of Scottish History. Now, this is a fantastic name right off the bat, but this expansion itself is just so fascinating. What it does is it adds these new landmark cards. And the way they work is they're going to replace some of the landmarks in the original game, which are these tiles that have basically events or art associated with them. And it's going to replace them with new ones. And these new landmark cards are double-sided. When you get a landmark card originally, you'll have an effect that's passive or a bonus that you get immediately. But when you flip them, you'll trigger an additional bonus in addition to generating more point income. So you have this incentive to flip the cards. Now, how do you flip the cards? There are actually tiles in the game that you're going to be taking that when they're triggered, let you flip cards. So I love that this is a new commodity in the game where you're now trying to time your flipping of cards in different areas. It's going to incentivize getting more landmarks because they're actually more out on the board. So there's a bit more competition and scoring for them. And I just think that it's a simple mechanism where you are just adding to an existing pool, but giving a slight twist to increase the incentives on them. So I really like the system. I love the timing aspect of when to flip, and I love how you're getting multiple uses out of these landmark cards. So that's the Dubious Tome of Scottish History. Have you tried this expansion yet, Dan, from Glenmore 2?
I've not tried this one, no. So despite Glenmore 2 being one of my favorite games, I've really only tinkered with the first couple. So I've got so much more to explore, and I'm quite excited to hear that, some of them are really good. So yeah.
I think that if you are going to implement one, this would be my next one. Like, I think all the other ones are pretty minor. The boat race is amazing. I love that one. And
Yeah,
this one is, I think,
I like
up
that one.
there on like that creativity and just how well it implements to the game. Like I could see myself playing this one in any game. I could see this being just an easy one to throw into any of them. There's a lot of special abilities and things that you'll learn and read as you play, but the barrier to entry is actually extremely low because you only have to explain the tiles as they come out. So very impressed with this one. That is the Dubious Tome of Scottish History for the Mechanism Appreciation for Glenmore 2 Chronicles. Dan, what do you got for me?
Okay, so I am going to be talking from the game The Search for Planet X, which ironically is an app-driven deduction game. But this is one of that 1% of app-driven games I actually play. So this one, the actual mechanism I'm talking about is the time system. So as you know, watching this video, you probably know there's a lot of games that use this system where actions take a certain amount of time, and then people who haven't spent that amount of time keep taking turns until they catch up with you. And actually, Glenmore uses that same system. So there we go. We've got 2 games here that use that system. But this one, the fact that it uses a deduction game using that is pretty much unheard of. I've not seen that in any other game, a deduction game before. But the way the thing that dictates the speed in which you move around this this time track depends on the questions that you're asking the game to try and deduce as information. So if you are relatively vague with the question you're asking, i.e. like you could say, how many asteroids are there in 4 or 5 sections, and they might say, oh, there's 3 in this in that amount. But if you're very pinpoint accurate with it and you say, like, is there an asteroid in this section, it will give you a more direct but more concrete answer. But doing so will actually cost you more time. So I like the idea of, you're more incentivized to be a bit more, or use your deduction skills in order to waste less time, or you could be, again, more concrete evidence and maybe not use your skills so much and spend more time. And for me, this really does kind of contribute to the overall feel of the game, because I feel, despite me liking deduction games so much, this one does a good job of getting around that thing where I normally find with deduction games that you normally are in the same kind of ballpark of when you finish, because the kind of filtering of information comes through at the same pace, and therefore you're normally within a turn or 2 of each other. And so if you're somewhat competent, you'll probably be in the ballpark. But in this one, it really does throw that open, and it can mean that people who are really good at deduction can really explore those skills and give that extra wiggle room to show off, really. So yeah, I think it works really well, and it's a real good twist on deduction, because again, that merging of the time track and deduction just hasn't been done before, and this is done pretty much perfectly.
I like this. It reminds me a lot
So yeah,
of
that's the time.
I really like this. It reminds me a lot of the way that you're getting and collecting clues in something like Awkward Guests, where the better the clue, the higher value it is. And I think that's really neat. So I like how that's translated here, but you have complete agency in the questions you're asking. So I really like this. This is cool. That's a great mechanism. How neat.
Yeah, it is. It works. It just works seamlessly. Yeah, very well done.
Fantastic. So that is the Search for Planet X. How cool. I really got to give that one a try. Heard nothing but positive things. Now, back to the subject of apps. How do you think the app integration is on that one?
It's spot on. You just because it adds so much variability into the game. Like every single game, it just randomizes everything, and yeah, replayability factor is just off the charts. Really, very impressive.
Fantastic. All right, that brings us to our next section here. This is our random game section. This is where we go to Board Game Geek and we hit that randomizer button. Any guesses in the comments? Any guesses here this morning? What do you think we're going to be getting today?
I'm going to say this is going to be the most obscure, awful thing that we've ever seen. Yeah.
I think it's going to be a relatively well-known game, but maybe not the highest rated. Here goes. Whew. All right, the game is Kandidatuur.
Oh, 3 out of 10. Very nice.
That is very well regarded, if I do say so. So it is an educational game about work councils in the Netherlands, a gripping theme. This game here is it's 30-minute playtime, 2 to 6. Excellent. Players are candidates for a works council. Roll a die to move forward on a track of experiences in a work council. Encounter various events. Reach the end. Win the game. So it looks like it employs a roll to move mechanism, but it sounds like you have multiple tracks that you get to move on, according to the description. But according to what it actually looks like, probably not. Oh my goodness. I don't know if do you think this is like educational game first, or what do you think?
Yeah, it looks like some kind of variation of Snakes and Ladders. That's yeah, been got a few unique spaces that will teach you something. Yeah, yeah, this is a catastrophe.
Okay, let's look at the center space. Can you explain what's going on here? Any ideas? What do you think is happening in that middle section? Is that one, two, three, four, five, six? Is that like 12 spaces? Is that one space that if you, it's like, is it like Squid Game where if you jump on it, you're just going to fall? Or like, what? Oh my gosh, don't go to space 37. It jumps from 36 to 43. So that might be multiple spaces.
Yeah, that doesn't. Yeah, I don't know because it doesn't even add up. So I don't know.
All right. So if you have any cool information on Kandidatuur, we are totally up for hearing your thoughts on this game. Have you tried this one? Is this one you enjoy? Is this a mainstay in your collection? We'd love to hear all of your different thoughts about it. So if it's one that you're interested in this holiday season, let us know. And we'd love to talk more about it in the future. If that's what you're asking for, we will oblige. But that's it for our randomizer section with Kandidatuur. All right. So now that we're moving past roll and move style games, let's move on to our next section where we're going to have to, contest different ideas and opinions on game and why is this in your collection. So Dan, I'm going to have you start off on this one and defend a specific game. Now, this game is in your collection as one that is rated pretty low. It also has a player count that's a little hard for me personally to get played. So I'm curious as to why this is in your collection, and this is the game Magic the Gathering. So first off, just tell me, why do you enjoy this one, and why does it have a spot in your collection?
Okay, so kind of prior to getting into board games as we know them, or as we're into now, I did have a brief stint playing Magic the Gathering, collecting cards, building different decks and stuff. And I enjoyed it for that time. I like the idea of just buying cards and seeing what you get and stuff. I thought that was a lot of fun. And I think the actual game system is pretty good. Obviously, it's very good. It's massively successful. Uh, but being more of a Eurogamer and certainly finding my taste, I didn't even know that Eurogames existed when this came out. I have massive issues with the with balancing and stuff like that. Power creeping, people buying cards just so they can beat you. I used to like to play this game, make kind of thematic decks that all kind of made sense and just work together that way, rather than just buying 50 of the strongest cards that are going to pulverize you. So yeah, unfortunately, this is not the style of the game that I enjoy anymore. But I still have it in my collection because I still have all my cards. So it's kind of a, it's a thing like that. I still have the cards, and therefore I consider myself still having the game, even though I would play it again under the right circumstances. But kind of, I think my time has come and gone with Magic the Gathering. I think they're just better games out there, and it's just not for me anymore. But again, I love the versatility of the game. I love the way that you can inject so many new mechanisms in the system. But yeah, it's far too imbalanced, far too again pay to win basically.
Unfortunately, but I do think you're correct. I think that this is definitely a game that is responsible for so many innovations in just board gaming
Oh
and
yeah,
card games in general. Like I think this is a huge cornerstone in the hobby, but to me it's not one that I really enjoy playing. This is very popular currently at the school I work at. So there is actually a Magic the Gathering club that our librarian runs, and the kids are very much invested into it. And I'm so happy that they're finding some kind of common ground to enjoy and share in. So I love that Magic the Gathering can be used for that. But me personally, this isn't a game that I'm ever going to choose to play. The mana system is something that I don't really enjoy. That your resource cards are in your deck, and so it's just not one that I ever see myself gravitating towards. To I think there's a lot of fantastic reiterations on this that have taken this core idea of use mana to pay for cards and have done it in a better way. Force of Will is something that comes to mind. But obviously, this one has a player base, so it's going to continue from just forever, essentially, just because people have
yeah.
invested in it for years. So it's not something that's going to stop anytime soon. So thanks for your thoughts. Is this in a shoebox, or where is this in your collection?
Yeah, this is in a storage box under the stairs. Yeah, I don't, I don't bring it out.
Fantastic. All right, Dan, what is your game we're talking about?
Okay, so yeah, this is a game from your collection that, again, moderately rated, not the highest rate from your collection. And this is a game I really wanted to like. I really wanted. I've not played it, but I really wanted it to be good and wanted it to appeal to me because it is absolutely beautiful. But I couldn't find the gameplay in it. I just couldn't see any reason to back it. And this is a game called Parks, and I know Parks has really got a big following. Maybe a big part of that is the artwork and stuff. So is the gameplay actually good in this one, or is it really going on the back of how beautiful it is?
So, yeah, it is going on the back of how beautiful it is. I'm not going to mince words here. I think that Parks is fine. Parks is a simple, standard contract fulfillment game with extremely impressive artwork that employs the path mechanism. So, on your turn, you move down a path and you go as far as you want and you gain the resources or you get the ability of wherever you stop. And that's pretty much it. You can occupy a space that somebody's on by spending a fire token, and that gives you some flexibility in your choices. But honestly, you are really just trying to maximize the amount of resources that you get at a time, and you're trying to change them into these park cards for points. So you're going to get a goal, an end game goal for that you're working towards, and why you're actually collecting specific types of parks. But ultimately, it's just a race to see who can get these resources to get those points. So this is one that I find just extremely simple in what it does, very easy to teach. A lot of people enjoy it for the aesthetic, and that's really why it's here, because Ariana, my wife, really likes the artwork in this game. She loves just the chill nature of it. We both agree that it's not the best game. It's definitely one that is not super high, but it is just really pretty to look at. It makes you feel like you want to go outside, and generally that's what we'll do after we play a game of this. Is we'll go and research a national park or something and go out. But we both understand that it is definitely a bare bones, very very simplistic set, just a resource fulfillment game. Get stuff, turn in for other stuff, and that's really all it is to it. There is some swinginess with the way some cards can come up. Certain goals are just better than others, and certain canteens are also better than others. And so we feel very much like a lot of our plays are very much like by the numbers. Like, okay, this is clearly the best play. I do that. And there's not, even though there's that path and that choice of pushing forward, the choice is not really strong. Now, you might say that the fire tokens change this, but really they don't, because you want to still maximize the amount of stuff you're getting. And so there is an optimal time to playing that fire token to gain the best yield of resources. So it's not one that I recommend. Honestly, I think that it's very pretty, and I think that if you'd like to give it a try, great. But I don't think this is one that's going to really stick if you're looking for something with extremely awesome gameplay as opposed to extremely cool artwork. Now, Emily here has a very different viewpoint, says Parks is awesome. Taught my mom she didn't get the combos you could do to achieve park cards, but the art and components were a draw for her. And I will say that is the biggest draw for this game. It is stunning. It is beautiful. Yeah. And that's really why it gets played, is because it is so pretty. And that's why it's in our library, is because people pick it for that artwork. It's one that people are like, ooh, let's pull that one out. So I don't know. It probably didn't convince you at all. It probably just reiterated more of what you were kind of expecting.
Yeah.
But any other questions on this one?
No, really. I was just thinking. I saw the rating there, and I think it's pushing towards the top 100 games of all time. I mean, that's, to me, is absolutely baffling. I mean, there's some incredible games that are rated lower than this. And do you think that's purely because of the artwork? I mean, I'm just shocked at that.
Yes.
There's not much here.
Yes. I think it is purely because of just how approachable it is. So more people are playing it, which BGG loves favoring games that are getting more ratings. And I think the gameplay is something that you can approach and something you can play. So it's going to be a game that a lot of people gravitate towards and say, oh, I like this one. And I think they're going to rate it a bit highly because it is very well done. The game, oh, it's so pretty. I think Emily said it well, that says that, hey, you can really get drawn in by these gigantic cards. And I think Emily also has a good point here, saying it's also available in big box stores. So it's one that people are going to get their hands on, and it's going to be something that draws them into the hobby. So for a welcoming game, I think this is a great idea. I think this makes a lot of sense, and it's going to grab people for that. But that's Parks. That's why is this in your collection? Because it's pretty, and because my wife likes it. That's why Parks is in that's why it's in our library.
As good as reason as any.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, I can't say no to that. So that's that. So that's our why is that in your collection. Now that's going to bring us to our last section here. This is our A to Z. This is going to be a game from each of these not a game of each of these weights from light to heavy, talking about something. And our letter this time is for N. So Dan, go ahead and start us off. What is your first game?
Yeah, so my light game with the letter N is tried and true classic for me, one that I always recommend. This is a game called No Thanks. No Thanks, one of my favorite filler games, probably always will be. A very simple bidding style game, but you're bidding not to take cards because you're trying to get as few points as you can. And you have a bunch of tokens. You're either choosing to take the card as negative points, or you're choosing to or plus points, sorry, or you're trying to put a token on it to say, you know what, no thanks, I don't want it, go on to the next player, and they can make that same decision. Keep going until you go through all the cards in the deck, and the person with the fewest points at the end is the winner. I love this economy of the game when, when you take the card, not only do you get the points, but you also get all the previous tokens that people have used to pass on that token, which can sometimes just tilt the balance of making that decision, saying, you know what, I can afford to take this one, let's do it. And I also like the fact that you can kind of stack these cards together and make runs of cards and not suffer the penalty. That's probably one of the coolest twists on the game that I think there is, because sometimes you can afford to take a card, nobody else can, and you can use that to your advantage. An absolutely brilliant, accessible filler game, one that I've never had a bad game of it. I've taught this to people who've never even played board games before, and they absolutely loved it. So yeah, one of the best filler games ever made. No thanks.
This was definitely one. It was like between this and my choice on my games, but I figure you would put this because I knew you really like this one. So I left it for you, but this is a fantastic choice. I love there's push your luck with trying to collect those sets, and it feels real good when you complete it. And especially if the number is very high, because you're able to kind of, milk everybody else for their cash and try to get some more money out of it. But do you push it too much and somebody takes it and all of a sudden your run is ruined? So I really like that system. Oh, it's so nice. Yeah, fantastic. Brilliant. All right. So the next game here, this is going to be my lighter pick. This is a puzzle game that I really, really enjoy. It's such a simple system. This is game number 9. So number 9 here has you playing a Tetromino style game, but then the Tetrominoes are going to be given out in bingo fashion. So somebody's going to be flipping a card. You're going to take the corresponding polyomino and you'll put it in front of you and trying to get levels created. Now, what do I mean by this? So the components here are going to be stackable. And what you're trying to do is trying to get your low numbers on the bottom and your high numbers on the top. But that being said, your bigger numbers are generally going to be a bit more funky or a bit more large. So it's going to be harder to actually get them on the top. So you're putting out this layer on the bottom of hopefully low numbers and then doing your best to stack them, because the level they're on is how many points they're multiplied by. So if they're on the first level, which is 0, the 0th level, bottom level. The bottom level is 0 times whatever the number is. So anything on that bottom is a foundation, but worth no points. Kind of scary. So you want to get stuff on those higher levels so you can get those higher multipliers. But that being said, there can be no overlap. You can't have any hanging tiles. So you have to be very conscious in the way that you're placing things. So I really like how simple and straightforward this one is. And I love how the pieces come out. Everybody is able to jump in. The insert for it is so nice with the way that you just grab the tiles you need. And the arc of the game is really fun because everybody is trying to maneuver these different tiles. Now, if you do play this, I do recommend the Starting Tiles expansion. It's a little promo expansion you get from BGG. And all it does is it adds, you get a little piece to start the game with. And this goes miles to differentiating the gameplay, because everybody is right from that first turn going to have a different board. And I think that's really cool because you can't just kind of mimic what other people are doing, and you get to really create your own thing. So number 9, have you tried this one, Dan?
Yeah, I had this one. I really enjoyed it. I still enjoy it, but it was directly replaced for me by Miyabi. So it kind of does the same kind of thing, but has a bit more going on. But yeah, I love this game. Well, really, really fun little filler game, puzzly, 3D aspect. Yeah, nice one.
Awesome. All right, Dan. And what is your heavier game for this week?
Yeah, my heavier game is a game called Navegador. Navegador is a MacGurt design. I talk about this one quite a bit as well. It came very highly on my top 50 games of the year. And this one is the traditional MacGurt rondel as you're moving around this wheel, taking different actions as you go. You're sailing and trying to explore new lands. You are building plantations and building factories to buy and sell these goods, and it all works on the supply and demand system. A very tight economy in terms of getting money. I love all the different ways you can score points in this game, because all the different strategies are all very unique in their own approach and are really just certainly viable paths to victory. But you have to invest in buying these little patrons at the top in order to actually score those points in the first place. And the more you go there, the more you can invest in doing so. So it has that kind of Concordia system where you can invest in a certain strategy. Really nice flow of the game. The rondel works wonderfully. I really like the look of this game as well. It has a real kind of rustic, old-timey map look, and it's just a wonderfully smooth game, as you'd probably expect from a designer like Matt Gertz. Has some real cool incentives where you want to do things earlier because they're cheaper, but you also want to push on further so you can get those exploration tokens and go into new lands, because that's another source of victory points. A fantastic Euro game. Somewhat lives in the shadow of Concordia, but I don't think it should do, because it's a wonderful game. That is Navegador.
This is one that I want to try, and it's kind of funny. You're totally right. It definitely lives with the shadow of Concordia.
Yeah.
Some expansions for Concordia come with expansion for Navegador, which I think is really funny, because it's like, hey, we also have this other game you should play. So pretty hilarious. All right, and the last game that we're talking about, my N, is going to be for Nemesis, the board game. A huge thematic game all about surviving on a spaceship. So this is essentially Aliens, the board game. You're going to be doing your best to semi-cooperatively survive and fulfill your objective. Do you trust the people at the table to help you out, or do you just do your own thing and, forget them? You're getting into an escape pod and you're getting out of here, so it doesn't matter. This game is pure thematics, lots of rules, but everything makes sense in the grand scope of things. A game I love to teach, and a game that brings a story with it every time you play. My favorite part about this game has to be just the way that the intruders work. I love that you're making noise around and attracting them. You can strategically attack these characters or run away, and it's all about this risk management system. Do you push for more actions, which puts you in a deadly area, or do you do your best to just go all out and just be as safe as possible? So the secret answer there is don't be as safe as possible, because you're going to run out of time to do the things you want to do. It reminds me a little bit of Robinson Crusoe, where if you are being safe, you're probably going to lose. So it's a great game, fantastic experience. One you've played, Dan? I don't think so.
No, I haven't played this one. I'll try it though. I would try it.
I think that this one benefits from someone who knows the rules really well, because there's lots of these little tiny thematic rooms that all make sense, but somebody needs to be there to tell you what they do whenever they're revealed. But I do really like this game. I think it's just so on point, and my favorite part are actually using the expansion intruders as well. I love that the way they change up the game, particularly the one that gives you that makes you go insane. They're like these nesting eggs that sit around and will influence what you see and make you hallucinate these aliens, and so they don't actually exist, which I think is such an interesting concept, because you can never kill them. You can only overcome them in your mind. So I think that's such a cool concept, cool twist, and it's a great take on the madness mechanic. So really fun. I really enjoy Nemesis. So that's my heavy game for N. And that is our show for this week. Those are all of the games that we've been talking about. Quickly in the comments, we have Emily here with her ends, Nagaraja for the light game, and Networks for medium, and Newsfjord for for medium heavy. I totally agree with you. This is one of those game component upgrades where the gold we got, and we were just like, what the heck is this? So it's really funny. I actually almost put Newsfjord on this list, but it barely missed, because I have actually only played Newsfjord solo, so I didn't feel that I could speak to it as highly, even though I think it's a great solo game. I just haven't played it with multiple people, because we just always end up grabbing a different Uwe game when we're playing multiplayer. So this is just one that has not reached the table when it comes to multiplayer. So how about that? But that's our total show. If you have anything else you want to add to any of the different sections, anything that we talked about today, please put it down in the comments. We'd love to hear what you think just in general. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, Fatal Papercut, Emily, Horde of the Board. Loved having you here. Original Nuck Chorus, thank you so much for your comments and your contributions. This was a great stream. Dan, any thoughts or final thoughts before we leave today? Any games you're excited to play?
Yeah, great episode. I'm just having a look at some games I want to play. I really want to get a game of Goa in. So
Oh, okay.
this is yeah. I actually ended up spending quite a bit of money to get a copy of this one because it's long out of print. An older Renature Euro that's very hard to get hold of now. So I've managed to get a copy. So I'm looking to get that onto the table relatively soon. How about yourself?
So we have delivering on Saturday, actually. So we're about to head out of town on Sunday. But Saturday, we have Final Girl coming in, which is a new version of basically the hostage negotiator system, but set in a horror movie universe where you are the final girl standing, and it's your job to defeat some evil terror while going around like a mansion or whatever the scenario says and rescuing people. Love the thematics. I love how they're taking the hostage negotiator system, which is super amazing, super solid, and putting a map to it. I'm thrilled. I'm so excited to dive into this one, and it's going to be here in tomorrow. It's going to be here tomorrow. So excited. So excited. Fantastic.
Amazing.
But thank you so much for being here this morning. And thank you again for all of your contributions. Dan, it's a pleasure as always. Thank you so much for being here. But with that being said, side game strong, everybody. We'll see ya.
Goodbye.